What's up, Chillinois? Today I'm in Chicago, Illinois with a very exciting group of guests. Before I get into that, let's talk about how we got to where we are today.
In 2019, the Illinois General Assembly sent the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act to Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk to be signed into law. The Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, otherwise known as the CRTA, legalized the sale of limited amounts of cannabis to all adults ages 21 or older. January 1st, 2020 was the first day of adult use sales. At the time, there were licensed operators that were able to start selling adult use cannabis. The CRTA also included language that allowed the state to license new operators in the new and burgeoning Illinois cannabis industry. Today, I'm sitting down with Alex and Ambrose from the 1937 group. Cresco Labs recently announced that Parkway Dispensary, the retail operation owned by the 1937 group, is a social equity group supported by the company's SEED initiative. Also, the 1937 group recently announced that it secured $17 million in new funding. The company reportedly closed a binding financing agreement with SGG Enterprises LLC, a private investment group. The 1937 group was one of only 3 groups who won a license in 3 separate categories out of over 7,000 total applicants, making them one of the freshest vertically integrated operations in the Illinois cannabis market. Ambrose, Alex, welcome back to the Chillinois podcast.
Thank you, Cole, brother. I have to say, just first of all, man, it's good to see you in person for the first time. We've talked a number of times over the years. And this is our first time actually sitting down face to face. And, you know, honestly, I wasn't going to agree to another podcast with you unless that was the case. So I'm glad that you're here in our home over here in South Shore. Glad to talk to you.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for all the work you're doing for the plant and moving that forward. So excited to be here with you guys.
It's a little trippy to be here in 3D, and, you know, in first person. I've, you know, when I started this podcast, it's all looking at a screen. So to an extent, don't take this the wrong way, but some of the people I talk to feel fake because they're not in the flesh real in front of me. So it's always an adjustment here.
And then the other thing too, and you can tell me in the future if you find this is the case, but you know, is the conversation a little bit different when you're face to face versus over the phone, you know?
Already, absolutely. I mean, there's just a lag, and it's like out of our hands. It's just technology. And since we are talking and we can see each other's facial expressions, there are cues that you guys can give me that it's like, oh, you're about to say something. And online, sometimes I talk over my guests or vice versa. I hate it when I do it though, because it's like I feel so rude, but it's like, it's that lag out of my hands. But anyways, I want to start with a little bit of a celebration. I mean, guys.
Yeah. You know, I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, so when we got our craft grow license, I think we did have a little nice internal celebration with our team. But yeah, you don't often have a time to just sit back and reflect on the number of years that we've spent doing this. You know, all of our team members putting hundreds of hours of time, effort, energy, you know, putting their own money in for years, just based off of having a dream and a vision and working towards it. But at the same time, you know what I'm saying, like not making any money either, right? So years go by, you're still putting money into it, haven't gotten anything yet.
I was about to say, you're putting money into it. You may not be making money, but you're definitely spending it.
That's the stressful part.
But again, like we do it because we know like things will work out the way they're supposed to work out, you know? Like we've been at this for a long time. And I think the interesting thing about our group is that, you know, our entire journey has been documented. It's right there in public media. You just, you know, Google us, Google my name in cannabis, and you'll see going back from, you know, 2019 when we were hosting educational events for the community, you know, that were cannabis related at the Bronzeville Incubator, right, where we started at. So, you know, I think that's one of the things that people, they understand, they acknowledge, and you know, as they kind of look at us now, it's like it really helps folks to just really latch onto us and what we're doing, because they see where we come from. We're not just popping up out of nowhere. Yeah. We didn't buy nothing. We did everything ourselves.
Not corporate backed.
Yeah.
I think that's another big part of it too, is, you know, we're authentically social equity, you know, and that's been a big issue in the state. A lot of people, you know, upset about the process. And so, we're really trying to be intentional about being out there in the open and letting other folks know that, we're here to help provide other opportunities for maybe some of the other folks that are on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Well, before we get too much further, we got a lot of exciting things to talk about, things that are coming to Illinois. I know people that are watching the podcast right now are like, oh my gosh, new brands, new stuff. Really quick, if you're not watching the podcast, it's chillinois.net/video, or there's a link in the podcast description. Make it easy on you folks. Just go down below, click, and you can get to the video version. So before we get too much further, the 1937group.com, or is it just 1937 Group?
Go on 1937group.com.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cool. We'll have that in the podcast description as well. And again, before we get too much further, I know you've been on before, but flip of a coin, Ambrose, Alex, can you reintroduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and let Alex kick it off, right? Because he's actually been in the legal marijuana space for a lot longer than all of us here in Illinois.
Yeah, Prop 215 OG.
Yeah, man. No, I'm excited. I mean, honestly, I'm just really excited to be part of such a great team. And, part of what I bring, or I feel I bring to the group is, my network and experience. I started in 2002 in Santa Cruz, California as a 19-year-old kid, just, excited about getting a caregiver card. Because at the time, in California under Prop 215, if you had a caregiver card, you could cultivate for other folks. And so that's where I got my start. Later was part of a group that took an ancillary company public. So if you've ever seen the plastic pop top joints, that was our group, started that in 2010 and then took the company public in 2015. And then I've always just done real estate in Illinois. And so naturally, when legalization happened, or it was going adult use, Ambrose and I linked up through a mutual friend and applied for some licenses, and we were fortunate enough to win the licenses. So incredibly excited. I'm the chief strategy officer and co-founder of the 1937 Group, and really just here to help run our business development, raising capital. We're a startup right now, so everything is you wear a lot of different hats, but really my main focus is just running our strategy and helping to build on the vision that Ambrose started off with, and just continue this on, hopefully for the next many years in multiple states.
Very cool.
Yeah, and just for myself, I'm from around here my whole life, and I've always been a consumer. I've always had a relationship with the plant ever since I was a teen, right? And back then, you didn't really think about it's possible to have a long-term sustainable career, selling weed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of my family spent their lives in and out of jail, my whole life, you know what I'm saying?
I was gonna say, you might have been told the contrary.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So kind of seeing the in and out of jail and what that relates to in terms of just, money making potential as you get older, right? They kind of help steer me, towards a different route. So I went to UIC. I got my master's in healthcare administration. I worked in hospital management for a number of years, and I always still had a relationship with the plant. But obviously when adult use came back around, and just based off of some of the people that I was around at the time, and with the social equity program kicking off, I was like, hey, based off of certain arrests I've had, going back to as young as being a minor, I am defined as a social equity applicant based off of the statute here in the state, whether you agree with how they define it or not. And so I was like, hey, if they're gonna extend this olive branch, let me go ahead and try and do something with it. You can't complain if you don't try and do it and make a difference. So that's why I'm here.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, I'm just really excited to get into your most recent news. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about which licenses you got. But before I do that, I want to make sure that my main camera is going. So we'll return with licenses. We got to make sure we capture everything, boys. This is a good, I can feel this is going to be a good conversation. So the licenses, this is huge. This is historical. I mean, so tell us, break down the licenses and break down what that means for you as a company, AKA tell people what vertically integrated means.
Yeah, I mean, so Illinois initially had announced that they were going to be releasing, multiple types of licenses. One would be a retail license, right? One would be a cultivation craft grow license. One would be an infuser license, and then the third would be a transport license. From the very beginning, we understood that there's value to being vertically integrated in certain markets, and we believe that this was one of the markets where there was a lot of weight to being being vertically integrated. And so from the very jump, our intention was to apply for and win dispensary licenses, a cultivation license, and a transport license. And I was very deliberate about how we went about doing that and putting together the right team members that can help us not only write application content, but once we win these licenses, actually operate.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, kind of the trap that a lot of social equity applicants fell into.
Yeah.
There was folks knocking on their door and saying, I'll do everything for you, just give me X% equity. And it's like, no, why would I want you? Why would I want you to do everything for me? You know what I'm saying? Because then when we get a license, what am I gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
What am I gonna be? So for us, we then went about the work, and it was extremely difficult because if you look at the business, the operation model related for cultivation versus like a retail, two completely different businesses.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and then you add transport, and that's something else. So it's like, okay, we have to learn all of this stuff that's completely different from each other at the same time, and then we have to write this multi-hundred page documents that outlines how we're going to do every single little step within the operations according to the legal laws in Illinois. And then you have to put our stack of paper against somebody else who's doing the exact same thing, but they're coming from a position where they're already doing it.
Right.
Whether out of state, in state, whatever it is, like they're already doing it. So they've got all the answers. It's like a freaking it's like a written test. Like
Yeah.
They've got all the answers, and we have to fucking figure it out with this much time.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, at the end of the day, when we come out on top, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell yeah. So again, for folks that don't know what vertically integrated means, like you say, it's business smart. Explain it. You got it end to end, basically, right?
Yeah. You want.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, or anybody for that matter, vertically integrated essentially means that everything that we do, we can do it in-house. We don't have to
Right.
rely on a third party.
Mm-hmm.
Now, naturally, on the retail side, if you're a cultivator, you're going to want a lot of retails that you don't own and people that you're working with to, sell your brands into those stores. But essentially, having a transportation, cultivation, and retail will allow us to go from seed to sale, and cover all aspects of the business without having to outsource anything.
Bingo. Yeah. You don't have to outsource anything.
Yeah. So when you control the different, aspects along that supply chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that you often say is like there is going to be a day, right, when price compression comes to Illinois,
Sure.
right? And there might be an incentive for those operators with big cultivation footprints to cause it in order to drive the smaller operators out of the market, right? And so, again, just like as another example, being vertically integrated kind of will allow you to be insulated a little bit from
Right.
some of those market pressures, as long as you've got the product and you've got the quality and you've got the consistency and you've got the community behind you, right? And, just the loyalty from that standpoint.
Definitely. A lot of people have been voicing those concerns. What happens if you only win a dispensary license? Are the operators going to like corner you out? And so, like you say, a good way around that is to grow your own product and sell it. Bring it between your locations so that you don't have to outsource any of that. And like you say, insulate yourself within this, what's about to be a really competitive market. I mean, one of the things that
Can I ask you though?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to throw another perspective out there, just we don't know how this thing is going to play out. When you say a really competitive market, right, we know that there's a number of dispensaries that are going to open up. If you're talking about on the cultivation side, there's a number of licenses that were given out.
Yeah.
And we don't know what percentage of those will actually open up, right?
Yeah.
It's a very difficult time right now for license winners on our side.
Right.
Very, very difficult, especially on the cultivation side. So I just want to throw that caveat and maybe even like just clarify when you say competitive, like in what way is important, because we might find ourselves in a position where not much has changed on the cultivation side, 2 years from now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we can, let's talk about some of those complications. I don't know if you're having to deal with them, but maybe you've heard about it on the street. I mean, there are supply shortages. Sand is in short. We're having a sand shortage, which is really important for glass and concrete,
Right.
which of course is needed for buildings. Have you heard about that or experienced any of those issues?
Like
Is that part of what you're talking about?
I almost feel like any barrier that you could put in front of us is
You've
been put
gotten
in
it.
front of us.
Capital
Capital
is an incredibly important part of this whole thing, and having access to the right capital, right? Because there's a lot of money out there, but the terms are not that great, or they're predatory, and so a lot of these other fellow license winners are really frustrated with the process, and then having the restrictions on canopy space. It's been really hard for businesses that are starting up to retain majority ownership and get the funding that they need with all of these limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from on our side, one of the things that we were fortunate to be able to do is that we were on the first wave of craft grow license winners, and so as soon as we got that license, that piece of paper, we were on it. We were updating our pitch deck. We were essentially started raising money right off the bat, and that allowed us to start moving forward with some of the things, so that when we're at this point now with this big supply chain shortage like causing issues, we try to get ahead of that as much as possible by preparing and purchasing and putting deposits down on the things that we need. So we're hoping that obviously that kind of bears fruit in getting us to market at around the time that we're expecting.
Sure. Well, I'm trying to get names out there so that it gets in people's heads. So we've already said the 1937 Group, the 1937group.com. We'll have Parkway Dispensary, something we've mentioned, Helios Labs, and then your transportation group, Highwaymen Security. Is that right?
That's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Good job.
I know this is probably just a softball question, but I don't figure you mind easy questions. Like, what did it feel like to finally what did you get? An email, a call, a bunch of calls? When, for the first license, let's just start with that. I'm curious.
Day, right?
It's like a golden ticket.
Surprise, a good surprise. Right?
It was more like, we as social equity athletes had been used to getting disrespected by the state, left and right, And one of the biggest issues that we've had was just a lack of communication. What's going on, what are you doing, what the timing is. And so, for the dispensary licenses, we were sitting on our hands for 2 years waiting for our license that we had already been awarded, right? On the craft grow side, there was a 1 year delay. We were just sitting on our hands. But again, we didn't know how long it was going to be before they announced the winners of these licenses. So after, about a year of not hearing anything, knowing anything, one day we get basically 24 hours before we got our license, we got notice from the state that we were going to be getting a license. So that's like how quickly things happen.
But can I ask you, what was that moment like? Did you get the notification?
So eventually, the next day when they're supposed to send the actual notifications out, like me and my team member Eric's like, on these types of days, he's like the first one to notice everything. He's like checking his email every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, but in this case, I just happened to see the email come in with the subject, like who it was from. I clicked it open and I was like, holy shit, this is it, right? So, yeah, it was a big relief. It was, it's kind of one of those things, like it's hard to even explain, right? I mean,
mind you, we've been paying rent on the building. It's a lot of emotions going on. Relief, celebratory. It's like
a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean,
because you're still
time
there.
Is a little bit more validation too, right? Maybe that's what it is too. Because it's like we won this license, but honestly, we put so much work into it. I knew for a fact we were gonna win it.
Yeah. But like you say, it probably didn't feel tangible or real until it actually was, and then you're like, okay. And like I say, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, but let's be clear, you're still in the tunnel. I mean, we gotta plant seeds, we gotta open doors and all those things. So just curious on any fronts, I mean, obviously your transportation license requires you to have something to transport. But do you have any ideas on cultivation or retail when you would be open at all?
Yeah, man, like we're making lots of moves out
Yeah.
here, you know? Like we're not even we never stopped. Even when they tried to stop us, we were never stopped. Like
Yeah.
there's lots of things that we've been doing in the background and on the ground, and as I'm sure you understand, there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes that people don't ever see.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so we've got a number of things going on that are really only meant to strengthen our position.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, I'll just start off by saying the craft grow. We're looking at having product on shelves in November of this year, which is a massive deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So that's number one. You know, I think on the retail side, you know, our dispensary is going to be a little bit longer because we're going to have to do a ground up build.
Sure.
So that's going to take more time. But, you know, at the same time, you know, we understand that there's value in having a larger footprint in Illinois. And if you're going to do it, the time is really now. And so for us, we've been very active in leveraging our position as kind of one of the leading vocal out there social equity groups that's really making a lot of noise and doing things to kind of transition that into deal flow and, you know, partnership opportunities with others that, you know, are in a similar boat, maybe similar, you know, vision and values, and they like what we're doing and they want to be part of it. And so, you know, we're already, like, I don't know if we want to get into all of that, but like there's like, if you think about what we've got right now, what we're working on is probably about 3-4 times bigger than that.
Yeah.
And it's all being done at the same time.
Yeah. A lot of moving parts. A lot of moving parts. So the grows in Bellevue.
Broadview.
Broadview.
I'm not, so I was close. Yep. Where is Parkway going to be, or do you have an idea yet, or is it like,
you know,
how does that work?
Really, we have two different concepts, right? Or you could call them brands as it relates to our retail dispensaries, right? So Parkway is one. It kind of has its own lane, its own look, its own feel when you walk in. Kush League is another, our second kind of brand. For our dispensary line that also has a separate product line associated with it. Right. It has kind of its own lane, right? And so depending on where we have stores at, right, and you know what the community is like and what we feel like they'll gravitate more to is what defines what we put where in terms of Parkway dispensary versus Kush League dispensary. Yep.
That makes sense. Well, I can already tell you right now, just a little bit of what you've talked about is going to make Illinois consumers really happy. You know, the thing is that this market I actually have figured out a way to put it into a bottle. People are really frustrated and confused and upset. And I've just started to tell people, you know, this market's not made for you. Or it wasn't made for you. And the people that we're currently operating aren't growing it for you. I'm talking about the original operators, let's be clear. So before you had all gotten licenses, everybody's gotten licenses. The original state of this market, these companies, in my opinion, don't report to the consumer, they report to their shareholders.
Correct.
So why would they give you a deal? Why would they cut? Do you think the shareholders want to get less dividends or whatever returns? I don't know. Not a big stock guy. You know, it makes sense when you really boil it down to that. So that's why I'm excited for local people that actually care about the community. I'm glad that people like you are getting involved in the cannabis industry because it's, you know, if I could quickly, and I feel like you guys will be able to piggyback off of this easily. Illinois cannabis community has not felt like the Chillinois cannabis community. It's not Chillinois at all. I'm sorry to use my own name as the pun, but this is not Chillinois. This is really not, you know, like so far there. Now look, summer with the return of a little bit of normalcy after COVID, it was nice to see events and everything. Yeah. But I just can't wait to see more cannabis companies like yourselves open up doors. So
yeah, thanks. I mean, I think a lot of what we're doing, to Ambrose's point, is really intentional, you know, specifically to your point about the cannabis consumer. And I think that there's a big lack of meeting those consumer needs in the marketplace right now. And that's kind of the angle, that we'll come into the market with is really focusing on what we know, which is what cannabis consumers really like, and take that into many different levels, and from genetics and strains and products and SKUs. And so we've already been working behind the scenes on multiple brands that are really
Nice.
dedicated for the culture, not for corporate cannabis. And
Hell yeah.
so that'll be a different experience. And then, as Ambrose mentioned, in terms of our internal different concepts, that's something that we're incredibly excited about too, is really taking the knowledge and experience of, and also seeing what's out there now. And
Yeah.
if you ever go to a dispensary in Illinois, I mean, it's no new news, but if you've talked to anybody, it's not designed for an experience whatsoever.
Right.
And so that's what we're excited about, is not only bringing that experience, but also the new footprint of all of the different licenses, and seeing the different approaches to the retail side of things, and making it different, and for the culture.
And that's the other thing too, is like when we talk about the current dispensaries, the current operators, current cultivators, like honestly, like I don't have any reason to say anything negative about them.
Right.
Like I don't care. Like I'm doing my own thing. We got our own lane.
Yeah.
And as long as I just execute on what I'm doing, like I'm gonna be fine. Like I don't need to bump myself and compare myself to
See,
them.
and you got the right viewpoint at it. I've been trying to drill home Ed Rosenthal, who's a pretty big figure in the cannabis
yeah.
community. He's got something called the tomato model, and I could read the whole thing, but let me just drill it down to what I think you just said.
Good old Ed.
Commercial cultivators can thrive alongside specialty and home cultivators. And I'll add on to that none of any of those parties should be intimidated by any. It's just like tomatoes.
Right.
I people sometimes don't like when I use that example, because they're like, you can't get high off tomatoes. Okay, yeah, no duh, right? But I'm talking about, it's an agricultural commodity that is grown both by home growers, specialty cultivators, and commercial growers, and there is no issue there. It's not like, so.
Well, the other thing too, I think it also ties to what you said about what's missing in the Illinois market and the community just
Yes.
in general, right? So it's like, for me, I'm more so focused around, one of the things I'm focused around is kind of like tearing down those barriers that kind of keep us apart. Like when you think about the cannabis community, like you said, Cannabis Expo. It's like one group of people that go from one expo to the next in different places of the country, and they all know each other, right?
Right.
And if you think of like the music community or the fashion community, it's like they all smoke weed too. You know what I'm saying? They're part of the cannabis community also. And so it's like it's by deliberately doing things that kind of reaches out to all of those folks that are part of the real cannabis community, and bringing them together is how we increase our reach. And that's an example of that is something else that we're doing in November, the KVL International Flower Ball, which is something that
I'm excited about.
we're about to launch actually pretty in the next few days.
Sweet. Well, we'll have to get a hold of some announcements or something so that we can help you share that. I'd love to help get people there. So you said that's a flower ball. Can you give me a general idea what might be happening there?
Yeah. So, basically it goes back to, my intent of always trying to lean into my strengths or the strengths of the people on my team. Like that's how you do things easy and you do it the right way, right? As you're working in people's like places of strength where they really can excel.
Yeah.
So I have a team member who has, like they run fashion shows for a living, right? They've done 50 plus all around the country. And so, we know Cannabis Expos, but, I also feel really bothered by like when you go to a Cannabis Expo, like nobody's allowed to smoke. You don't see anybody smoking weed, like that kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you take these concepts and like in my head and I start to put them together. I'm like, you know what? Like, I think that there's something we can do that hasn't really been done before. So it's kind of taking that fashion show concept, bumping it up, combining it with the Cannabis Expo, right? Making it for the culture and really, and just kind of doing it nice. We're doing it in a really upscale facility, Sin City. It's gonna be top shelf, right? So basically, the first part of the day is cannabis, like more of a Cannabis Expo with different activations and really engaging a lot of the folks that are here right now, in Chicago and doing their thing. But they haven't had a platform really to like go above water, and so
Sure.
and that's another part of what we're looking to do just long term. But yeah, and then later on in the night, it's there's a real fashion runway show.
Sweet.
The event is going to be co-hosted between us and Money Mayha from 92.3. The after party after the runway show is going to be DJ'd by DJ Ferris and DJ Maphis. You know, we've got participants, you know, that are coming from, you know, West Coast, East Coast, Pacific Northwest, Michigan. Like,
Big names.
it's like again, it's really for the culture, and that's what people they gravitate to that type of stuff.
This is huge, and I'm glad to hear that it's going to be part of continued efforts. That it's not just a thing that y'all are doing, like, you know, to, you know, stir up whatever. So that's really exciting, and it's something that I again think is lacking right now. Like, there's not really that connection between the community and the cultivators in Illinois. I think the only connection between the community and the cultivators are that dish out a lot of money on the product. that's the connection. The connection is that it affects my bank account. Anyways,
Talk about cultivators. Talk about this strain Mason.
yeah. Let's talk about it. It's pretty ridiculous.
What'd you roll up?
This is actually gifted to me. It's, you know what? I think it is a cross with OG. Did you say you liked OG? I can't remember the strain name right now, and my phone's over there, but I think it's a cross with OG, and it's homegrown. So feel free if, but yeah. What was I gonna say? So tell us about. So you mentioned Parkway Kush League. You were telling me about Kush League. Tell us a little bit about the idea behind it.
Yeah, so Kush League is you know, it's a brand that's intended to service the culture, you know, and merge really the fashion, music, and sports community into cannabis, because as Ambrose mentioned too, you know, that's already an existing part of each one of those independently and part of the cannabis community. And part of the brand's mission is to really kind of focus on the destigmatization of cannabis in sports.
Yeah.
You know, you recently seen Kevin Durant come out on you know, his platform is big. He came out openly on a podcast or an interview saying that he was high, and you've got all these other, you know, they're not anomalies. I mean, they're happening. You know, Brittany Griner, you've got Sha'Carri Richardson, and all of these athletes that, you know, are being treated differently because of their use of cannabis. You know, in many states it's legal now, and you know, there's a lot of big influence as, you know, not supporting cannabis, so that's why it's remained the way that it has for many years. And so Kush League is a brand that's really just focused on, you know, removing that stigma and letting people know that cannabis and sports can coexist. And they have, and there won't be any lack of performance, and still be used responsibly, and, you know, and really just removing a lot of the really bad things for your body, like the opioids and things that these athletes are kind of been given. And so we'll have product lines that are really specific. And then, you know, the name Kush League goes back to, like, you know, for me in the industry, OG Kush was a really big part of our life in the cannabis culture back in California. And so we plan to do some creative things along the Kush lineages, from OG Kush to Bubba Kush, and focusing more on those kind of strains. But yeah, we're really excited about it, and
Dope.
Can't wait to get some products on the shelves in Illinois.
Yeah. Now, Ambrose, what were you going to say about this bud? Did you have something to say about this exquisite flower that we might be tasting?
I was gonna let you go ahead and kind of take a whiff,
a smell.
right?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
Actually, we got this Bangarang right here, Alex.
It's one of my favorites.
And folks, if you're watching right now, I'll chop in a close up of this bud. So. Oh yeah. Yes. It's quality cannabis right there.
So it's a mix between Rainbow Chip.
Yeah,
and
so the Bangarang, which I really like, has the lemon tree lineage, and so it's crossed with, I believe it's Bonkers and Rainbow Trip.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a unique, got very unique terps. It was
it's like you can
pheno
tell.
hunted by Strain Mason, and it was bred by Exotic Mike Genetics, who's one of the bigger breeders in the country that does a lot of really good work and crosses. So
are you guys looking at anything like this, to like working with people like this to try to bring some of these types of crosses here? I know that might be a little proprietary, might even be a little soon to ask, but I'm just curious.
You smelled it right.
I haven't smelled the second one.
Oh, the second one this one. This is Gastropop.
Gastropop.
This was originally a pheno bred by Compound Genetics, right?
Yeah, pheno hunted by Strain Mason, but it was
Pheno hunted by Strain
but bred
Mason.
by Chris from Compound Genetics. Those
Pretty much all we smoke right now is
just put
Strain
this one in my
Mason,
bag.
man. all we smoke is Strain Mason. You know what I'm saying? Like that's our boy. You know, he's a cultivator here in Illinois, and like he grows the most top shelf weed you'll ever see. Anywhere we go, you know what I'm saying? We pull out this weed and people are like, oh, starstruck. They're like, holy shit, like what is this? So,
Yeah, no, I mean that's those both of those jars are coming home with me. So I'm joking. So that's really cool. Say their name again. Do they have social media or anything?
Strain Mason.
Strain Mason.
Yeah, it's a guy, Strain Mason. Yeah, he's a cultivator. Strain_Mason.
Perfect.
On IG.
I'll have to connect with them, and we'll throw that handle in the podcast description, folks. So,
bro, like honestly, if you had a podcast with him, it would be fire, because this dude is like a genius. Like when it comes to like growing weed,
hell yeah,
you know, like he's got such a love for the plant and what he does, and he's so intelligent, and the way he's got everything dialed in,
right?
It's amazing.
Hell yeah. Well, I will definitely hit him up. But
yeah, going back to the brands though, you know, the other kind of one that we're working on as kind of one of our leading brands will be called Terp Kings.
Hell yeah, saw that.
So I mean, Terp Kings, obviously. So the focus initially was, all right, we want to focus on just flower strains that have unique terpene profiles or high terpene percentage, right? Like that's the idea from the get go, right? But also, I think it's important because there's like just an educational aspect that goes along with it. You know, a lot of folks, they just buy based off of THC percentage, and there's like a high correlation between, you know, saying the cost of weed and the THC percentage. And folks are not understanding that, like, you know, judging quality in weed is not about just picking that one molecule and saying, yeah, more of this means it's a better weed.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's going to get me higher. It's going to make me feel better.
We don't drink like that.
Yeah. So there's a whole, like yeah, exactly. Like I don't go to the bar saying, just give me the highest proof alcohol you got. Here's 99%.
Rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, here you go. Like that would be stupid if that's how you judge quality in alcohol. So, you know, there's a similar type of thing, you know, going on in cannabis right now, you know, where obviously you've got to start taking into account, you know, things like the terpenes, terpene profile, flavonoids, all the cannabinoids, you know.
If it doesn't smell, if it doesn't taste right, I'm sorry, but that's part of the smoke, so it doesn't smoke right.
For us, I mean, we never even back in the day looked at percentages of you know, THCA. I mean, at the end of the day, that only started when corporations got involved.
I was going to say,
and then I started thinking about it, and I started wondering, you know, is there any, you know, correlation with manipulation of the industry based on them being able to control testing labs and set a price based on THC or something like that? I mean, you know, but there's no true distinction, you know, or evidence that something with a higher THC is better quality than something that
or even gets you higher. I think I've seen things that say like you don't actually even get higher, like at some point.
Well, yeah, and so here's an interesting conundrum too, because to play to the point where you're talking where it doesn't make sense when we're looking at this by THC percentage. In Illinois, products with higher THC percentage are actually taxed higher, which so you can see maybe a motivation to falsify lab reports. We won't get into that, but the idea is, because that's, you know, people can look that up online. My thing is Illinois, just a policy completely unrelated to cannabis. We've got a soda tax. Why do we have a soda tax? Well, we figure the logic behind it is if you're drinking soda compared to a bottle of water, we're going to tax that more so that maybe you might go for the bottle of water. At least that's what I've been told the logic is.
Right.
Just hold on for a second. Now, so with cannabis, you could argue that and many physicians have argued that eating it and that vaping it is safer than smoking it. Yet we're taxing the arguably maybe more healthy products more. Do you follow my logic? I know I'm saying a lot of words. I'm high, but
I saw something.
Do you follow me on that?
little bit.
You'd think that following the logic of soda, the healthier products, aka
So you're just calling out like there's just a different motivation behind why the higher THC is taxed higher.
yeah,
It doesn't.
and you would think that because those products are healthier, like you'd think that you, in the vein of a soda tax, you would want to maybe tax the flower higher. I'm not advocating for any of these things. I'm just talking about logic. Just talking about
Yeah,
logic.
there's a
based.
lot of things that are done in the industry that are not logical.
Let's not talk about taxing anything higher.
Yeah. Let's keep that
Talk
out
about
of here
reducing the taxes.
for sure. So, what do you look forward to most? Is it getting product on the shelf? Is it that community connection and fostering that more? Is it all of it? I mean, what do you see in your future? What do you look forward to?
I'm most excited personally about just everything we have going on, getting operational. You know,
Yeah.
we've been really working so hard, and you know, there's this misconception. We've talked about it many times of that celebratory phase of winning a license, but really the work just begins at that point, right? Then you have to get the business set up. You have to raise capital, and for us, you know, as Ambrose mentioned, you know, we have pretty aggressive growth plans, and we want to enter the market, capturing a lot of the market as early as we can, and you know, and then leveraging our platform to truly help others, you know, and there's a lot of wonderful people that are in the space that have crazy talents, and you know, there is a benefit for them, you know, to attach themselves in terms of the support that they may not be able to do on their own, and that support isn't out there for them to do, you know, on
Yeah.
the legal side of the market.
Yeah.
And so getting some people with some really great brands and ideas and things that they're doing in the space and helping them kind of come with us in a way, right?
Yeah.
That's always been something that's, I think, important to us, you know, and the foundation and all of the things that we have kind of going on, you know, for job training and
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer for me is just like probably the same, right? Maybe a little bit more short-winded. I just want to do what I'm, you know, get done what I'm working on right now. Like that's what I'm looking forward to, is actually seeing the end product and the results of all the work that I've been putting in for years.
Yeah. Well, hey, something you brought up that I want to make sure that we touch on, because I feel like it's important. I thought it was a cool thing that the 1937 group does. You do give an opportunity for, I'm sorry, because we're stoned and my memory is fleeting, but opportunity for creatives to get involved. I saw something on your website where you can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that a lot of
we could just talk about the Turp Kings and what we did with the creative side.
Yeah,
I think that's what he's referencing.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Turp
I'm
Kings.
straight. I think that's what he's referencing. Yeah. So yeah, you know,
That's one of the things, right? We talk about like always looking for opportunities to extend our platform, you know, to others, whether it's, you know, even vendors that we work with or things like that. Like I need some help from somebody, graphic designer. Like, hey, you didn't know that there's opportunity to work in cannabis. Well, there might be one right here.
Yeah.
You know, let's see if you're a good fit. And then on top of that, man, I might give you some money either way. You know, and that's kind of what we did. And you know, the idea wasn't just to give money away. But, you know, as it relates to the Turp Kings in general as a brand, there's like a whole artistic angle to it that's going to blow people away, you know? And so, you know, part of it was to see if I could find that talent, you know what I'm saying, right here in the city of Chicago. So that was really the intent, but, you know, it went really well. And I think, it's along with our, you know, fits in with our mission, kind of what we do.
Yeah, I like it because it doesn't feel like we got our license, now we're just going to do our thing and we're just going to sell it to you. Like you have opportunities to get in, and then like you say, use that as a leap pad to do other things. You know what I mean? So
Community engagement. We're engaging the community of artistic folks, and
Yeah. That's the thing about, you know, us and how we kind of run this company is just like, I like to make it very like well-rounded, you know? It's like we don't just throw parties. You might see our IG like, oh, like they do a dope party. Oh, that's a dope party. Like that's not all we do, right? It's like we're doing other things. Like we're doing shit legislatively, you know, like going down to Springfield and trying to like advocate for, you know, for ourselves. You know, we're building brands. We're doing this fashion show and bringing all these brands from across the country together. You know, we're doing this freaking video series for Rolling with the Terp Kings. Actually, so that's something that I want to talk
we should
about.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the series is
exciting.
kicking off next week. So Rolling with the Terp Kings, right? It's
Hell
a
yeah.
video series. We shot 6 episodes.
And we'll have the promo in the podcast description because you have that up now. So
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you just like the
Where I got the idea from initially, right? Just like
Yeah.
the influence. It's, you know, you ever seen that YouTube series where they like eat hot wings with hot sauce?
Yeah,
With,
Hot
like-
Ones.
And they have a celebrity there and they're just eating
Great
hot
show.
wings and just like chopping it up while they're eating the hot wings. Like that was kind of the inspiration for the show, is to say like, okay, you know, you sit down, obviously it's an interview style with somebody that's a local celebrity, right, in their own right. And, you know, they have a conversation, but they also doing it, you know, over weed.
yes.
And it's not just like any weed. Like these are strains that we're looking at right now, potentially being part of the Terp Kings strain list, right? For the, you know, when we launch. So it's like these are like, you know, those types, like high quality strain mason quality, you know, type of weed. And so we like have it like we have going and like smell the weed, roll it up right there on the camera, smoke it, tell us what you think, talk about like the flavor profile.
Right.
That's why I want to do Jungle Cave for the first one.
Hell yeah.
Just cause like, man, he broke that shit down.
Yeah. Jungle K. We're going to throw, he's been on the podcast before, folks. You recognize him. We'll have podcast appearance and social media handles in the podcast description. I like to support our fellow creators, and that's awesome. I'm really excited to see that one come out.
It was good content.
He's cool as hell.
Amazing content.
Hell yeah. Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. So is it a mixture of asking about the smoking experience, but then like you say with Hot Ones, you have those different questions that you throw in, and I feel like that adds to it because you're high as fuck and you got to try to answer these questions, you know? Is that kind of how the show works?
It's meant to be just like more of like a two-way dialogue.
Sure.
Like, but start off with like just telling me a little bit about yourself and
Yeah.
how you get into what you do. So like, you know, again, it's like kind of giving them a platform. So when people they don't know, like see it, they're like, oh, okay. Like I get a little bit of a background first about
Yes.
you. And then honestly, the conversation just flows from there.
Yeah.
You know, and at some point they're like, all right, tell me what you about to roll, you know, and like, do they do that part? And yeah, that's pretty much the formula.
They also ask them, you know, how they came into contact with the plant for the first time.
Yeah, and they talk about their relationship with the plant. Like all of them are like, they're like top it in their field and whatever, and like all whatever they do, they're all in different areas,
Hell yeah.
right? But like they also have a relationship, like a deep relationship with the plant. And
Fuck yeah.
in some instances, you know, in some instances it's like a big part of their business. In some instances, probably maybe not. You know.
Will you be like releasing this on YouTube under like the 1937 group or something, or under Terp Kings?
Yeah. We'll be
Cool.
launching in our 1937 group.
Cool.
YouTube.
So yeah, we'll have all those links in the description. I always try to make sure people can find everything we talk about because people get frustrated. You talk about something like, where is that? So-
Yeah, man. Like I was just kind of just getting started with YouTube, man. I only got one video posted up so far. That was just kind of like our intro video that we made.
Sure.
You know.
Well, this is all really exciting for multiple reasons. A cannabis company getting involved in media like that, getting involved in the community like that. But then I'm really looking forward to seeing the products on shelves. And as I told you guys the other day, I'm excited to, I think the word I'm looking for is patronize your establishment. In other words, spend some money there. So yeah, looking forward to all that. And I think our community is looking forward to more places and more groups to connect with. Because again, I feel like part of it is now the community part is coming around.
Yeah.
You know, we've got Lollapalooza and all these things coming back, even though like I think you said it, you can't smoke there. So it's like, what even is the point? But I know it happens anyways, but you know, so yes, the community is coming back in that way, but still what's lacking, and you probably know this, because in California there's an awesome cannabis community. Like I feel like that's what people think about when they think of cannabis being legalized. They're like, okay, now we're gonna have these cool events and all these, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, so just to like chat easy breezy stuff for a moment. What is it like coming from those 215 days to now? I mean,
Oh man, so
because you've been in it 20 years, right?
I mean, it was yeah, man. So I've been in it for 20 years. It was different times, you know, much less cooler, much more risky.
Any seed to sale? Not in the early days, right?
No, I mean, we grew our own, so in fact, it's so funny because you mentioned Ed Rosenthal, and I was just telling the story the other day. When I moved to Santa Cruz for college, I went down to Pacific Avenue, and they had all the smoke shops with all the, Rasta colors in those shops. And I'll never forget, we started growing because I picked up an Ed Rosenthal book, and that's how I learned how to grow weed.
Really?
Yep.
That's awesome.
We started with a 4-lighter in my sophomore year. It was one of my best friends today. His mom owned the house and rented it out to a bunch of college guys, and we all played sports in college. So it was like we called it the Cali house. And in the back, we had a jacuzzi and a shed. And so we were living big in the college house with a jacuzzi, and then we were growing weed in the shed, and that just I think with the plant and the community of that and the search to constantly just learn more about it, the curiosity is really for me what it was like, just evolving. And then as you're in that underground scene, you just talk to other fellow people, but it was nothing like today because there was no social media really at that time. A few years later, MySpace got going, but before that, it was just purely, you grow weed? What soil are you using?
Right.
In fact, we used to actually have to park. There used to be a hydro store by our house, and we'd have to park like 3 blocks away because we didn't want anybody to see us pull up into the park. It was just a different world, and, I love the plant, I'm here for that reason. And, I'm just excited, man. I'm excited about the market here because it's just so new.
Yeah.
And to be able to leverage a lot of that experience and bring it here,
it's so weird actually to think about that, how it's been legal, like, medicinally for so long. And now recreationally for so long.
It's almost been legal medicinally for 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost.
But the thing about it is like how there's no brands that you feel like are real authentic, like Chicago brands or,
No.
like that you can rally around.
In fact, when people come like to Chicago and they post on like Illinois Trees, they're like, hey, trying to look for some good weed. They're like, well, then don't go to the dispensaries.
That's the
find
most
somebody else.
thing that we hear is that same statement. That's so funny.
Yeah, no reason to waste the time, I mean, anyways, I wanted to ask you, I feel like you've got an interesting like perspective on this, like, cause I'm sure with this comes this is another way to connect with the community, a lot of employment opportunities. And one of the questions I feel like is always weird is that like, cannabis companies, I've seen like job postings and they're like, we want this many X amount of experience. And it's like, this has just been legalized. So maybe if you were fortunate enough to live somewhere else, you can have that on your resume like you do. I mean, you were able to do that. But I feel like you have an interesting, probably and a better perspective on being able to vet that. But I'm just curious, like, what are some of your employment opportunities? Like, if it's too premature to answer this question, I'm just curious if you're like staffed out, you got a cultivation staff.
It always starts with good genetics. That's the number one thing I think is when you're growing weed, you have to have a good grower and good genetics. And I would say, that's two of the areas, both those areas we're really strong in, leveraging growers that have many years of successful growing experience, and just based on results. I mean, you look at the quality here, you can see, there's procurement is something that we specialize in, and so knowing what the consumer wants, it's not always the highest THC like we talked about, you know? And so, the brand Terp Kings was a brand that we introduced for that reason, as Ambrose mentioned, because it's to showcase like a wine, the different aspects of the varietals and specifically the terpene profile.
And we're doing it in a cool little way too. I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but like
you gotta follow at Terp Kings official to get more information and follow what we're doing.
It's just a unique concept that hasn't been done yet.
Well, people that listen to this podcast know why I just got really excited, because you didn't use the word strain. So that's a big plus for me as a cultivator, because it's like, let's advance this to a real conversation. I've talked to so many I've been going around to different universities and they don't ever say strain. In fact, a lot of people are like really stepping away from that because of the whole COVID thing. Like, you know what I mean? So thank you for, that's exciting. That in and of itself, to hear a cultivator like use I know it's a small thing, but you know, for me, it's big. It's
funny
big.
that you look out for something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just
never
like,
thought that.
it's just because I get stuck on small details, but people have heard me say this time and time again, but strain is a word for microbiology, fungus or viruses. It's not in, I always forget the goddamn word, a horticulturist's vernacular. You know, like it's not in their dictionary. They don't strain, like, unless there's a fungus that's within their greenhouse. Like, yeah, there's a new fucking strain of a fungus that's wreaking havoc on our lettuce. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to give you props on the little details.
Yeah, no, we're excited. You know, we think terpenes are the future, and definitely, you know, our plan to educate the consumer more about that, I think, is, you know, going to be the key to the success of kind of changing that narrative.
Yeah. Can I ask you what I know is a premature question? You talked about legislative work. I saw that your cultivation center could be built out for 50,000 square feet of canopy. I feel like this is a rhetorical question, but do you have any plans to make it so that you could take advantage of all of that canopy?
Yeah,
because I know right now
so-
it's 14,000 cap.
So yeah, I mean, all right. So the first thing is the building is 50,000 square feet.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, we've got extraction and infusion areas,
Sure.
right? Obviously, you know, the locker room, whatever, bathrooms and all, little small office, right? That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, for the canopy standpoint, right? It's really designed to be able to house 14,000 square feet of flowering canopy.
Gotcha.
Right. But we had to start off with 5. So that's the goofy part, is like, you know what I'm saying, build out a little bit. And then like once we're operational, we have to keep, you know, building out, which is not good from a cross contamination standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, so that's why we want to start. We want to do everything, right? We want to be able to optimize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing though too is, I mean, we can't go upwards. So we're kind of already building it out with, you know, the power needed, you know, how we're gonna add HVAC, you know, the rolling racks even have kind of steel grates that come out when they come apart, so you have like a second walkway if you need it, right? For you know, essentially to go upwards if we were to get another license.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, those are 2 things that we're advocating for. But at the same time, I think for me, the most important thing is just like, we're not concerned about like just our success
Sure.
in this space. Like, to me, that's important. Like, we don't want to, at the end of the day, we don't want to be the only successful ones that like really make it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, then they would fit.
that wouldn't be good for us.
You
know?
need competition.
So
yeah. Healthy competition.
Yeah.
Right.
And in some instances, you can even look at it like we're not competition, because, you know, what we provide in terms of the market share, they have, from a capacity standpoint, is like peanuts.
Yeah.
You know, on the broad scale of things.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you for acknowledging that. Because
But yeah, I mean, so like when we go down and we advocate for things, it's like, you know, everything is done also with the intent of like thinking about everybody else who's in here and like might not be in the same position in certain areas.
Yeah.
And like what will help them, you know what I'm saying, succeed.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I think one of the things you said earlier, sorry to bounce around, because that's like a deeply important topic for me, if you couldn't tell, but like one thing you said earlier, I just don't want to forget it, because I've heard it, I've myself predicted it. Do you believe that one of your upward, like it's going to be a little bit of a battle, you know what I mean? Like you questioned me earlier, like how competitive will it be and stuff. I don't know. But do you think one of you alluded to, and I've predicted it before and I've heard other people say it, it's that maybe, there will be a price drop all of a sudden when you guys come on market to make it really hard for you to compete? Or are you not really worried about that because you're insulated as a vertical operator?
I would say we're not that's actually something we're looking forward to, simply because the retailers. So right now there's 110 retailers in the state, and the new 185 are what we're excited about for us, because we'll be part of that group, and we plan to obviously get more retails of our own. But there's a lot of other retail owners that we've been working with, networking with, that support our movement, and want to support us and have our products on their shelves. So, you know, I think the goal long term is, to your point, is to, you know, make sure that we have enough retails so that the more retails we have internally, we can sell more of our product through our own existing retails that we own.
Yeah.
You know, where it becomes more competitive is the outside, you know, areas where you're competing for shelf space, or maybe with the bigger MSOs that want to put most of their products on their own shelves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know personally, like, how I feel about, what's the likelihood that the MSOs are gonna you know,
And not even just the
price
MSOs,
drop
but
things.
just the current operators. Yeah.
Yeah, the current operators, period.
Yeah.
Like,
'Cause we talked about that last time.
though, in my opinion, very low right off the bat. I don't think that's...
But we talked about that last time. I don't mean to like retread water, but you know, so there are current operators and most of them are MSOs.
Yeah.
And that, I like that you went out, I believe it was you came out and made sure to clarify that, you know, being a multi-state operator is kind of the goal. MSO does not equal evil.
Right.
Just because the current people might disagree with the current multi-state, the current, you know, selection of multi-state operators we have. Coca-Cola is a multi-state operator.
Yeah.
Like the goal is to be in every store everywhere.
Yeah. And thanks
know?
for clarifying too with that point, right? Because I was using them interchangeably a little bit.
Some people do that, and so yeah.
You know, they're not. Just like in Illinois, sometimes it feels like that. So
it does. You know, and actually, I've talked to people. You know, you like go to protests or whatever, and people were like, "Fuck the MSOs," and it's like I'm like, "What are the MSOs?" And they're like, "It's all the people that are operating." I'm like, you realize, I think at least 2 of them are not multi-state operators, which I know it's just 2. Yeah. So yeah, they're basically right by referring to them collectively as the MSOs. But
no, it's good to be clear about what you're saying.
Yeah. And it, not only to be clear about what the actual circumstances are, but the fact that, in my opinion, being a multi-state operator would be the goal.
Right.
You know, like Mike Malcolm, he is technically a multi-state operator because he has Kranja rolling trays available in dispensaries here. May not be a cannabis product, but he's also got them available along with Kranja. Shout out to him, by the way, weed on the Weed Maps list, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that.
But anyway, he's a multi-state operator.
But to your point, man,
Who was that?
Like I don't know if I did say this before or not, right? But I would say our goal isn't necessarily to become an MSO. Like, that's not our goal, right? Like, our goal is to grow smartly.
Sure.
First of all, focusing here in Illinois, our home state. That's it. Outside of that, if there's value in doing something like a partnership, you know, in another area, like that can turn into, you know, MSO type of opportunities.
Sure.
But it's just based off of like the relationships we have, and like, hey, this is why it's a good thing for the overall brand and the business, the way things work together and connect. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the only reason why we would do it, not because we just want to get big and be a, you know what I'm saying, multi-state.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant. I didn't mean to speak for you guys and say that's your goal as the 1937 group is to become an MSO. I was trying to say, like, that's the ideal goal for anybody that would get in the game of.
I mean, I look at it as,
you know,
not necessarily from that context, but it's just work. You know, if you're doing good work, why not do good work in other areas if you can help out other communities? Yeah. You know?
Well said. Well, hell yeah. I've had a lot of fun today. So we'll have close-ups of this weed we've been talking about, along with the branding and everything else. You know, there are, I believe there are more rounds of cultivation licenses and dispensary licenses. I think at this point, at least, the bill calls for 500 dispensaries. So for folks that are like wondering if there's more, there is. And I think as of this point, I spoke to Dave Lakeman, as I was telling you guys before we got on air, from the Illinois Department of Ag. He said that at this point, they have actually met their legislative goals. So for a while we were catching up, not only because of litigation that we talked about earlier, you know, like you guys had technically been awarded the license, but you couldn't have it yet, that whole weird situation. And then when they finally let that go, which hallelujah, we're out of those woods, right? But
that's crazy.
crazy times. So yeah, Well, any last thoughts? Anything that we haven't specifically touched on? I'm not saying we have to wrap up because things might come up in my mind, but I want to make sure that I've been trying to say what's going to be on the shelves, how we can find you online.
Kush League Official is the IG handle.
Kush League Official.
And then Terp Kings Official.
Terp Kings Official. Yeah, those are
cool.
two brands, IGs. But yeah, no, man. I think for me it was good to be able to just sit down, chop it up, smoke some weed, talk, like tell you what we've been up to. Just underscore like what it is that we're about, what we put into this, and just why we're excited to be where we're at.
Yeah, and maybe I'll come back and see you in November. Yeah, or sometime around there. We'll have to definitely
the KVL International Flower Ball. November
Yes,
5th.
and I'm gonna get that information so we can not only have it in the podcast but promote it. So
that's gonna be an event you don't want to miss.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this won't be the last time we sit down with the 1937 group on the Chillinois podcast. I'm really excited for what the future holds for you. And I just really want to thank you for spending your Saturday with me, and again for returning to the podcast, Ambrose. Folks, if you didn't know, this stuff costs a lot of money. I had to run all this stuff in, and you can donate to us at chillinois.net/support. I spend a lot of money to do all this and to produce this media for you for absolutely free. So if you're able to contribute any amount of money or just leave me a positive review, I'll take that as support. chillinois.net/support. Ambrose, I wanted to thank you for supporting me once. You were one of my first contributors, and it meant a lot to me, and I'll never forget that. Like, even little amounts, folks, it means a lot, because to produce this media, to capture this media, all the equipment that's required, all the licensing fees for the software to manipulate all of this media, and I've had to literally go to college to learn how to do some of this stuff. I'm doing this because I love to do this, but if you're able to support me at all by leaving a positive review or just throwing me $1 or $2, chillinois.net/support, or like I say, positive review on your preferred streaming platform. The 1937group.com will have all of the handles we mentioned in today's show in the podcast description. So if that's easier for you to get connected with Ambrose and Alex and the whole team at the 1937 group, just look in that podcast description, folks. We got the links in there for you. So, well, on that end, I think we're about to smoke some more weed. And because we're in Chillinois, I mean, come on, it's legal. Let's put it in the air. So we'll see you next time on the Chillinois podcast.